Good morning everybody and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Teignbridge District Council. Just before we go to the agenda, some protocol announcements. No fire alarm test is planned today, so should the fire alarm sound, please leave the room by the nearest exit and meet by the stand at the far end of the car park. During the debate, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and a boom microphone will be brought over to you. If you don't speak into the microphone, you will not be heard on the live stream. And please remain seated while speaking. Please keep your points short, and I ask members not to repeat points that have already been raised, and voting will be by a show of hands. Should the meeting be adjourned for any reason, any filming must cease unless the express permission from those being filmed has been obtained. And during any adjournment, I would ask that members, public and officers please leave the room until the meeting reconvenes. So moving forward onto our agenda, agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have apologies?
Have apologies from Councillor Evans, Hocking, Kerswell, Jeffreys, Morgan, J. Petherick, Thorne, Toome, H. Cox, Eden and Phipps.
Thank you, that's noted. Item 2, are there any declarations of interest? I see. Is that Councillor Patch?
Thank you. I'll ask people attending here, members and the public, to bear with me. This might be slightly longer than the typical declaration of interest, but I do have quite substantial interest to declare. I must declare first what I believe to be a non-registerable financial interest. And that is primarily a debt owed by me towards this council for in the region of £8,000 costs awarded to this council in civil litigation that I took against them. This is civil litigation concerning a standards case that was brought against me. This action was defended by Teignbridge District Council by means that included misleading the High Court and failing in their duty of candour towards the High Court. Associated with this debt to the council is currently deducting my allowance at source. Now, also associated with those financial interests, I have been on the receiving end of ongoing threats of bankruptcy proceedings against me from the solicitor acting on behalf of the council. I was also recently, just before Christmas actually, served with a court order by Mr. on behalf of this council to attend court for questioning regarding my financial circumstances, under threat of prison time if I did not attend. This was despite me having cooperated 100% with the council's questions regarding my financial situation and my ability to pay and the speed at which I might pay their debts. Incidentally, having made arrangements to travel to the court, they then withdrew this, though not after my having spent Christmas worrying about this threat of prison that was hanging over me, thanks to someone who I think is deeply compromised to this council. Now, I understand from the Constitution that it's possible for me to have a dispensation to stay in the council for this meeting. I would not want to stay in this meeting if it should ever get around to discussing directly the issue of the debt against me and remedial action in light of the wrongdoing of this council against me. I would like to leave the council then. However, I would like to stay and take part in debate about the main issue. And indeed, I have submitted a report to this council on item 3 on the agenda, which if I'm not to be here, I would quite like someone else to present to this council. So I would like to request a dispensation to stay in this council for this meeting. Now, there's a problem here, isn't there, really? Because if we look at who I might seek advice as, or a dispensation to stay in this meeting, who has a severe conflict of interest, in a sense that he has an interest in me not staying in this meeting, not participating fully in this meeting, in that he's written a report which has recommended this council not discuss fully the Ombudsman's findings of systemic problems at this council, but instead send it to the Standards Committee. So, in other words, send findings of a failed and discredited standards regime, a standards committee, to the Standards Committee to remedy. Of course, that serves his interest in his role, in my case, not being discussed publicly by this full council. Because I have no doubt that if the Standards Committee were to discuss this, it would be behind closed doors. So, who is able to give me legal advice without a conflict of interest on whether I might stay in this meeting? Is there anyone here? And of course, this issue of who is able to advise me without a conflict of interest themselves in having the deep problems at this council, particularly in its standards regime, brought to light, I see we do not have here. But I think the whole council, in a sense, has a conflict of interest in me not taking part in this meeting, and me not presenting my report, and me not voicing my concerns and setting out the evidence. I think that the leader of this council is involved in my case. As all members know, I've circulated a report setting out the evidence of the wrongs done against me by these various parties. I'm really at a loss to know who can advise me on whether I can stay in this meeting. Now, I'm just wrapping up now. These are important matters. I have a duty to present my interests at this and have decided whether I can stay here. And I'll remind the Chair, I'm sure he needs no reminding, that I'm sure he studied the Constitution on his duties as Chair of the Council. Number one is to be the conscience of this Council. I think something that's sorely lacking and sorely needed. A good conscience, that is. Now, I'd also be looking forward to hearing declarations of interest of others on this council, members and officers, senior officers. They might not have direct financial interests in this meeting, but by God, they have reputational interest in this meeting. If the truth comes to light, if the public hears what's been going on in this council, that's the end for them. Incidentally, I believe, looking at this report, making a recommendation which is unlawful, making an unlawful recommendation, I think his report to this council constitutes, under the Officer Code of Conduct, constitutes under the Officer's Code of Conduct grounds for summary dismissal.
Council.
Chair, you have begun speaking in order to say something and you've been shouted down by the councillor. That's a point of order, that is not acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Councillor Patch, could you confine your comments, please, to a declaration of interest?
Okay.
And that is up to you to decide, not anybody else. Only you can say whether you have a declaration of interest.
Okay, I will end my declaration of interest with reference to the letter of complaint that was sent to this council that led to the Standards case against me. This letter of complaint included complaints that implicated and
how is that a declaration of interest?
This is a declaration of interest because these are things in my report that I wish to present, which I will probably not be able to present once I've had a ruling on my dispensation. And that letter of complaint also was something that was sent to Councillor Connett, the leader of this council, that he discussed with before sending to construct the case against me, while ignoring all other complaints against those parties and of systemic failure at this council.
With regard
I'm wrapping up now. I'm wrapping up, Chair. Just it will take me less than a minute. Now, this letter, which Teignbridge Legal Counsel presented to the High Court, evidence to the High Court, suggests that the leader of this council did indeed receive this letter and discuss it with. I've got an email trail from this council and an information release which shows the solicitor for the complainant sending this letter of complaint to Councillor Connett, and yet at my standards case, when I wish to bring up this letter of complaint as defence in my standards case, I got I asked a simple question of Mr. Connett whether he'd seen this letter, and this was his reply. His interest with a simple question: has he seen the letter of complaint that initiated this case against me? And in that light, does he consider there might be any conflict of interest issues?
Councillor Patch,
You're about to hear the Leader of the Council lying at my standards heating.
but that has nothing to do with the declaration of interest.
Well, it is. It's my interest that the topic of this meeting is properly discussed openly.
Councillor Patch, you asked for a dispensation. A request for dispensation must be submitted in writing before the meeting can only be responded to in writing.
And can you, I wasn't aware of that, to be honest, having looked at the Code of Conduct for members this morning. Can you point me to the provision in the Code of Conduct that says that?
No, we're not going to do that now, Chair.
Don't think that's appropriate at the moment, Councillor.
Well, I think it is really, because you are the conscience of the council. You must apply the rules of the council. You're telling me something which I patently believe to be untrue.
I will ask the monitoring officer to make reference to where in the Constitution that is stated.
Point of order, Chair. Has a severe conflict of interest in me not attending this meeting and not voicing my concerns at this meeting. Indeed, me not presenting my report at this meeting.
And the procedure for seeking dispensation is set out in the Localism Act, not in our Constitution. Okay, well, I think we're bound by our Constitution. But the Localism Act says that we have to have a Constitution. I don't believe it sets out those specific requirements. In any case, has just compromised himself yet again by acting with a conflict of interest in order to deny an elected representative of the people to take part in this meeting. Councillor Patch, that's an allegation that has no substance. It's a fact. It's a fact. I would disagree. You are the conscience of this council. Act like it. This council has for so long been digging a hole for itself in the gutter and has finally leapt into the sewers where it is floundering in its own excrement.
Chair, this is not acceptable.
I'm sorry, Councillor Patch, that is not acceptable.
True though it is. I'd like a ruling by a legal officer, a legal representative of this council who is not conflicted with an interest on whether I might have a dispensation.
Dispensation has to be submitted in writing.
No, it doesn't. Refer me, point of order, refer me to that provision.
That's not a point of order.
That is, actually it is. A point of order can refer to points of law or points of constitution.
Can you indicate the rule? The point of order may relate only to an alleged breach of the council's rules of procedure.
Carry on reading. Or the law.
Can you tell me which procedure or which law has been broken now that you need a point of order?
No, you're the one who's telling me. I'm telling you the Constitution has been broken by you saying that I need to submit something in writing. You show me the law that says I need to present something in writing.
I think we will not hear on this matter any further. We'll go to the vote.
Isn't that something that needs to be put to the council to vote on, whether I not be heard? I know this because I've had a vote that I not be heard before on wrongdoing at this council, when the vast majority of these members voted I not be heard.
Thank you, Councillor Patch. Councillor Swain.
According to the Constitution, I would like to second your motion that this be no further heard. Thank you.
No further heard on this matter. Thank you.
I'm still awaiting. I know I can't be heard, but I'm still awaiting a ruling on my dispensation.
I think we should now go to the vote. Those in
which vote?
The vote that you should no longer be heard. Those in favour, please raise your hand.
I would like to request a named vote on this. Would anybody like to stand and support that?
Sorry, it's a named vote. So we'll have a named vote. So ask Trish to do the roll call. So those in favour of that Councillor Patch should no further be heard on this matter.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Austin? For. Councillor Bradford?
Against.
Councillor Bullivant? Councillor Colclough? Councillor Connett? Councillor David Cox? Councillor Dawes? Councillor Dewhurst? Councillor Foden? Councillor Goodman Bradbury? Councillor Gribble? Councillor Haynes? Councillor Hayes? Councillor Gordon Hook? Councillor Jackie Hook? Councillor Jeffrey? Councillor Jenks? Councillor Keeling? Councillor McGregor? Councillor Malone? Councillor Nutley? Councillor Parker? Councillor Patch?
I think you'll find I have a conflict of interest in voting on this, so I won't vote.
Councillor Pert? Councillor Petherick? Councillor Purser? Councillor Rollison? Councillor Russell? Councillor Swain? Councillor Taylor? Councillor Wrigley? Councillor Nuttall?
For.
Councillor Clarence?
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Any other declaration of interest? Councillor McGregor.
Chair, I'd just like to say, I think then, given that I'm not allowed to speak on the matter, Yeah, I'll have to speak up because the microphone's not working. Except that I'm not able to speak on the main matter, the only matter of this meeting, it's probably best that I left. Or am I able to sit in and watch what's going on?
That's up to you, Councillor Patch.
Oh, thank you, I'll sit in and watch.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to welcome you back. Glad to see you at the meeting today. However, I do want to bring up a matter of concern to me, which I think there is a conflict of interest for the Chair, which is yourself, because you are or have been a member of the Standards Committee that has been part of the report. I think there's also a conflict of interest having the legal advice coming from who is the subject of part of the report, and I think that members of the Standards Committee, past and present, within the last 4 years, should be considering their position as a conflict of interest, and I don't believe should be providing any legal advice on this matter, bearing in mind the nature of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. The subject of the report, it was the previous. So if we can move then to item 3 on the agenda. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Dawes, I didn't see your hand, sorry. Is this a declaration of interest, Councillor Dawes?
Yes, it's a declaration of interest, and then it will be followed by a point of order. The declaration of interest is that clearly this meeting has been brought about a complaint I brought forward against the council, which was, as you noted, under the advice of and who sat in on my standards hearing. The case was defended by who spent 3 years suggesting the council had done nothing wrong, and that the local government ombudsman had no jurisdiction and no oversight on this case. So the point of order is that it does have a full and robust conflict of interest. My declaration of interest is that I am party to this report, but given the endurance of the last 3 years and the ordeal that I've been put through, and given the words of Michael King, OBE, the local government ombudsman, that local councillors have a key role in scrutinising their authorities' actions and have an enhanced right of freedom of speech to ask what might appear uncomfortable questions at times, then I propose to continue to partake in this debate. And I think the council should look very heavily on its decision to silence those uncomfortable questions. They will be looked very dimly on in a court of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Just to remind you that this is a declaration of interest, not a debate of the contents
I was
of the
putting
report.
forward a point of order and a declaration of interest. I think I was very clear about that.
I don't believe that to be a point of order. We will move on to item 3 of the agenda, and that is the consideration of the report by the Local Government Social Care Ombudsman, reference number 21004-645, and I'll ask the leader to introduce and move recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman. I restate the apology I sent to Councillor Dawes on the 19th of January. As leader of the Council, I apologise to Councillor Dawes without reservation for the manner in which the Council handled the standards complaints process. I am sorry both for the manner in which the Council dealt with the matter and also for the distress and upset caused to him. I also apologise to the Council that, as the Ombudsman found, there were a series of faults in the Council's processes and in how the investigation subsequently unfolded. I accept the Ombudsman's report in full and all of its recommendations. I believe the Council should also accept the report and recommendations of the Ombudsman, and I propose the following, Chairman. I propose that we delete the recommendations 1 to 3 of the report issued with the Council meeting and insert new recommendations, and I have copies of these for distribution because there are a number of them, Chairman, but they are, I believe, comprehensive. The recommendations are: the Council notes and accepts without reservation the content and recommendations of the Ombudsman's report and agrees: 1. The Council apologises to Councillor Dawes, noting and accepting the apology presented by the leader on the 19th of January and renewed at today's meeting. 2. To rescind and remove a decision notice dated 22 July 2020, replacing it with a statement stating the notice has been withdrawn following an investigation, and provide a link to the Ombudsman's report. 3. That the Managing Director, on behalf of the Council, apologises to Councillor Dawes within 7 working days. 4. That the Managing Director apologises to Council for the matters identified by the Ombudsman in the Public Interest Report. 5. That the Council refers its former Solicitor and Monitoring Officer and the Ombudsman report to the Solicitors Regulation Authority for consideration. 6. A robust programme of training on standards and the complaints process is provided jointly for all councillors and the senior management team within 3 months of the new council being established this May. 7. A report is published within 4 weeks in the members' newsletter and on the council website, setting out how procedures for receiving and processing standards complaints have been updated to comply with the recommendations of the Ombudsman report. 8. Any further procedural changes to put into effect the Ombudsman's recommendations are conducted under the oversight of the Procedures Committee. 9. Council also believes the Ombudsman Service's interpretation of the Localism Act may have an impact for all other local authorities and is therefore a matter of wider local government interest. The Council's Head of Legal Services writes to the Secretary of State and the Local Government Association seeking further clarity with regard to A. Whether the Ombudsman has effectively created a new appeal process and suggested processes changes above that required by legislation. B. The role of the Ombudsman Service, which has, previous to Councillor Dawes' complaint, has subsequently declined to consider councillors' complaints about standards. C. The interpretation of the Localism Act, the Nolan Principles and the interrelationship with the Human Rights Act. And D. The duty of councillors to protect employees from bullying, harassment and intimidation. And finally, Chairman, the Council issues a news release to inform the public of the actions agreed at this meeting. Chair, when these recommendations come to the vote, I ask for a recorded vote. And finally, Chairman, the only purpose of today's extraordinary council meeting, as set out in my request to the Chair, is to consider the report and recommendations of the Ombudsman and such action as is necessary to direct the implementation of those recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Connett. The Councillor Connett has moved recommendations which have been seconded by Councillor Dewhurst. So it is now open for debate. Councillor Keeling.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I first would like to be associated with the leader's comments. Mr. Chairman, I apologise as the past Chair of Standards to Councillor Richard Dawes for the process of the hearing. I was assured by the then, not only prior to the hearing, but when we reflected during the hearing. I was always assured that the Standards Committee was following the model code of process and there had been complaints to seek an investigating officer who was independent. Has let Councillor Dawes down and the Standards Committee. Mr. Chairman, I believe our present has already made changes to address concerns of the Ombudsman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Keeling. There being no further hands, we have the recommendation. Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry, Councillor Dawes.
Hello, thank you. I note the apology from Councillor Connett, and it is full and unreserved. It doesn't match the apology that was put out by the Council to the press on the 19th of January. That apology stated, "We are disappointed that the Ombudsman concluded that contrary to what we believed at the time, our staff did not follow the correct procedures." That it went on to suggest that there was a problem in terms of councillor behaviour, that the council needs to protect its officers. It did not reflect the essence of the Ombudsman's report. I would ask this council, I've asked already this council, who wrote that press release. I note it was withdrawn, but it was reported by the BBC, by the Herald Express, by the Mid-Devon Advertiser. So the footprint of the council's apology is set with a very unsatisfactory non-apology. So I would like the council to make an official withdrawal of that and a public one. I note at the time when the standards procedures were found against myself and Councillor Malone that letters were written to the Mid-Devon Advertiser and the local press that were signed by multiple people, signed by the former leader, current leader of the council, deputy leader, chair of standards, chair of the council. So I would expect any public-facing apology to be signed by all those parties. I note Councillor Keeling's apology. It's a shame that that point 6 of the Ombudsman's report wasn't taken on board by the chair of the Standards Committee, that throughout the whole procedure I and Councillor Malone told him that they were breaking the law, that they were breaching the Human Rights Act, and that they were breaching their own rules. Councillor Keeling confirmed to me that he had read my report 7 times. He'd read it with the rebuttals in, but clearly not taken any of those on board. The thing that I'd note from the recommendations put forward by Councillor Connett that follows through the actions of the last 3 years is the council's disappointment in the Ombudsman's findings, because it appears that within your recommendations you're going to write to the Secretary of State once again questioning if this is any of the business of the Ombudsman at all. So ultimately, though you're offering a full apology, you seem to be suggesting that, that the jurisdiction should not exist. I think the Ombudsman made very clear on multiple occasions that they had authority. I'm not an employee of this council. My reputation has been trashed, damaged, and smeared over a 3-year period, and the council took no care or consideration of their actions. They ignored the fact that they had been told they'd broken the law, and they continued to smear me in public statements that were made by this council. Councillors in this room are still doing it today, it smarts really if you put forward an apology and within the same motion again want to question whether the Ombudsman actually has any authority to give oversight to this council. What my case suggests, in fact demonstrates very clearly, is that there are systemic failings within the standards procedures at this council, none more clearly outlined than those of the injustice that was dealt out to Councillor Liam Malone, who was tied up with me in an investigation, had the same procedures and processes put forward against him and the same decision. So I would move to add an amendment to the motion that the apology should be extended to Councillor Liam Malone, who suffered the same injustices from, as the council has just pointed out, a solicitor who they are referring to the SRA for oversight from a professional body. Therefore, the outcome of that standards procedure must be seen by this council as unsafe. I would also then go further that, given the details that were provided in my report that I've sent to council for this meeting, but can be reviewed at any given juncture indeed, that there are serious failings within the standards procedure throughout the last 5 years under the control. When the Ombudsman in their report pointed out failures, what they actually are talking about are maladministrations. When you pile up maladministrations, it doesn't take a great deal of time to get to a point that this council is guilty of some very serious failings that would constitute misconduct in public office or misfeasance in public office. Those are incredibly serious criminal offences that carry jail terms for the perpetrators of those crimes. So I think this council needs to think very heavily and consider its position as it moves forward and gives oversight, that it doesn't continue its pattern of behaviour and attempt to style out what is undoubtedly one of the most stinging reports ever delivered by an ombudsman, that names myself only done in 3% of complaints when it is in the public interest. So the council need to have some proper and thorough oversight. I know most of the people involved in this are sailing off into the sunset, but their actions have a lasting effect on this district. And if this council cannot have the correct oversight on its own failings, then it will be held to account through other routes. But But first, it has its own opportunity to set its house in order. So I'm proposing that that we add to an amendment to the proposal that Councillor Malone receives the same apologies that I receive, and the other standards procedures that were carried out by under the auspice of a who has been referred to the SRA, that they be seen as unsafe. Thank you.
Councillor Dawes has moved a proposal that the apology be extended to Councillor Malone. Is that seconded? Can we go to the vote on that, please? Councillor Rollison.
Malone approved of this. He's not mentioned in the report, and he hasn't asked to be so. Mention him in. Has Councillor Malone asked to be apologised to? Is he aware that he'll be linked with this report because his name hasn't been mentioned in it? He hasn't asked perhaps to be so. I mean, it's a point of, you know, respect for other people, isn't it?
Councillor Malone, do you wish to respond?
I'm happy to speak to that point, yes. Councillor Dawes submitted a complaint to the LGO. I didn't, because I thought the forces ranged against me in doing so were just too massive, and I just didn't have time. I've got 3 children, 2 of them have special needs. What Councillor Dawes has managed to do is a testament to his tenacity and proof that if you bang away hard enough, the light will eventually get in. I wish I had put in a report to the LGO, because God knows the things that were found in favour of Councillor Dawes that apply to me. I was had up by the Standards Committee for things that I published on a website months before I even thought about being a councillor. In fact, I only became a councillor because someone in the Lib Dem said, if you can do better, why don't you join the council? So I did. It's all on you, actually, Jackie Hook. So that's why I'm here. But God's sake, having the human rights abuses that apply to Councillor Dawes, they apply in some cases tenfold to me. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
So in answer to Councillor...
What also was different is that in my Standards Committee...
In answer to Councillor Rollison, are you prepared to have the apology to include you?
Yes, I'm allowed to speak to the motion. That was a motion, and I'm allowed to speak to it. If I'm to say, yes, I think it should extend to me, I should probably explain why I think that's the case. In my standards hearing, unlike in Councillor Dawes, there was an independent person called, and he tried time and time again to tell the committee that they were infringing on my right of free speech. He tried and he tried. He was ignored and ignored by people who don't understand the law, by people who don't understand procedure, by people who were just there to drum us into the ground. I'm talking to you, Linda Petherick. You didn't know what you were talking about, and you went after Councillor Dawes with things that were meant for me.
Councillor Malone, I don't think this is the right time for a long speech like this. You asked, were you prepared to
This
be
is
included?
exactly the time for a long speech.
Chair, point of order. It is not acceptable for the chair to be interrupted.
Can Mr Brown-Nose Swain just let me speak for a moment, please? I'm
Malone,
glad Mr Swain is here. I'm glad Councillor Swain is here.
Please do not use abusive language, Councillor Malone.
Because at every point, this was fought against. I'll take you to a full council, several full councils ago, when Councillor Swain asked the orchestrated question, apparently Councillor Malone thinks his human rights have been infringed. Has any research been done on that? And said, oh, yes, actually it has, and no such thing has happened. All the way through, you continued to set up these pathetic little question and answer sessions to carry on putting the boot into me, to carry on putting the boot into Councillor Dawes, and you conflated both of our cases all the way through. Your treatment has been appalling. I've had threats against my family made by who quoted our standards cases that were meant to be confidential. He knew the dates, he knew the charges, he taunted us with them on social media. He phoned me up over and over at midnight, and this is all because of what you have done. So yes, I would like an apology. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malone. Councillor Patch.
Three big lies this council indulged in stitching me up.
Councillor Patch, please sit down. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting word to use, or a phrase to use, systemic failures. The LGO clearly felt that there was a significant case to answer for Councillor Dawes and also mentioning Councillor Malone. But those systemic failures should come as no surprise to a council that has delivered what on the face of it, and I am going to use the term, bullying outcomes and biased outcomes, particularly around those who are not within a certain group. I'll give you, for instance, the LGO found against the council and the previous, in the case of a resident. That resident laid a complaint at the council's door that they had dismissed his complaint against the councillor sitting in this chamber currently as, what was the word that they used? It was vexatious, but had no basis for making that complaint, particularly as the resident was making a complaint about that particular councillor having failed under its duty, as outlined by the ICO, to deliver all of the emails. Now, that councillor was never pursued, never punished, never taken through a standards hearing. That was a serious breach of conduct on the part of that councillor, a serious breach of conduct on the part of the previous. So it dates back to even before 2019 when this council changed iteration. But I would extend the apologies. I would extend the apology to Councillor David Cox on the way he was treated. A very clear case of coaching of a complainant by a councillor in this chamber. And the pursuit of Councillor Cox was actually decided, and the decision was made on the basis that when asked what was the basis of evidence, said, oh, it was in the paper, so that's the basis of the evidence. It's already been dealt with. And yet there was actual evidence from a charity in the form of a statement from that charity that Councillor Cox was acting as a trustee of a charity, not as a councillor. So in that fact, I think that should be dismissed and corrected online. I think Councillor Eden isn't disputing that she swore, but she was treated very, very differently, markedly differently, from a man who had a reputation for bullying, who admitted the bullying in the paper, funnily enough, and yet when that was discussed, he was found not to have breached the code of conduct, and in the very same breath, Alison was found to have breached the code of conduct. Now, the situation in that environment, in the reports for those, it stated that Councillor Eden felt stress and fear. The town council, it's not the district council, the town council code of conduct said that members should not cause other members stress and fear. And yet that particular councillor who caused the stress and fear was found not to have breached the code of conduct. So very clear, marked difference in the way that people are treated. Excuse me, Chair. I'm getting, as the seconder to the motion, I am entitled to make a speech, and I can hear grumblings from people who seem to think that this is unfair, that I'm allowed to make this speech. My position on this is that all of the decisions in the last 4 to 5 years should be resolved appropriately. Now, whilst Councillor Eden is not making a complaint about her particular finding, because she did admit that she swore at Councillor Matthews on the day in the town council, the write-up afterwards caused her significant harm, reputational harm, because it was contradictory, and she did approach, and the response from and the standards committee was nothing short of dismissive. And that, unfortunately, speaks to the foundations of systemic failures within the council on the process of standards. Councillor Malone and Councillor Dawes have stated their case. Councillor Patches stated his case quite volubly this morning. But I think there is a good case for all of those standards decisions to be reviewed, and where appropriate, corrections made, decision notices taken down, and explanations put in place. And I think that's a valuable outcome for this council to rectify issues that it has. There are clear systemic failings in this council. It would be quite easy for members of the public to draw conclusions that if you step out of line, you will be punished. Councillors are supposed to work without fear or favour. That is the key element of being a councillor in this chamber. And if we can't work without fear or favour, then we should not be here. And I think it's really important that this council rectifies all of the injustices that have been inflicted on all of the councillors since then. It might be more difficult with Councillor Patch because that has been the subject and is continuing subject of legal interactions, but the rest should be done. On the matter of appeals, second appeals, that Councillor Connaught brought up, that the LGO is introducing an appeal process. Lord Evans of Weardale said for serious breaches, there should be an appeals process within standards. That was submitted to government in June or July 2019 as best practice. Best practice is a matter which I have repeated to this council for the last 4 years. It's not good enough that we are dismissed repeatedly for bringing points of order and questions to the council that are actually designed to help the council improve its processes, because some of them are seen as being from troublemakers within the council. And again, that is working without fear or favour. And even Councillor Eden, if you recall, suggested some really, really excellent changes that were dismissed out of hand. The big problem that we've got is people don't like change. I get that. But when appeals are made to the Employment, the Equality and Human Rights Commission and their advisors, the EASS, and they advise that councillors have been treated unfairly and perhaps unlawfully, and that is then also dismissed, that is a serious problem. These are experts in their field, and I would question, as I did at the appointment of the current, the expertise that is available to this council for understanding A, employment law, B, the Equality Act, and C, how that is applied. No evidence has come to light so far understands the Equality Act in any way. No indication that had any understanding of the Equality Act. In fact, one of them I would go as far to say as they had difficulties with the English language. The current independent persons, they look a very much better bet than the previous ones, and I think we should be ensuring that the complaint goes to the appropriate independent person based on their skills and experience. And I would hope that we have at least one who has an understanding of the Equality Act and employment law. But anyway, I'm going to finish there. My recommendation is that we second the process of rectifying all of the injustices over the last 4 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor.
For correction, I would like a response to something said about me by the previous speaker. Thank you. Point of correction and point of response on a point made about me by the previous speaker regarding the situation of legal proceedings. And in particular, this is related to the fact that the council has not yet apologised for misleading the High Court. The leader of this council has not apologised for misleading my standards hearing. Oh, put your hand down for a minute. And the chair of the standards committee, Linda Petherick, has not apologised for lying to me days before my standard hearing and saying there was no. Okay, I'll move to a point of correction. The status of my legal case is actually ended. It got to the European Court of Human Rights, and a single judge, without giving any sort of reasoning, said that it did not fall within their remit. So I'm afraid that avenue has gone for me. A few other avenues remain. Complaints to the police about misconduct in public office by people sat at this top table. Complaints of conspiracy to commit misconduct in public office, including people at this top table. Yeah, go ahead now, Councillor Swain.
Councillor Patch, thank you. I would remind Councillor McGregor that recommendations 7 and 8 in Councillor Connett's recommendations, on which we will vote shortly, is about how procedures for receiving and processing standards completely updated to comply with the recommendations of the Ombudsman's report. So I think the review that you were asking for is going to happen. Councillor Connett, did you wish to respond? Thank you.
Chair, if this is the last speech, I would like to...
I'll come back to you in a moment, Councillor Swain.
Closing remarks.
Chairman, I just simply wanted to respond to a query that Councillor Dawes raised. When I spoke earlier, nothing I said was intended to diminish the apology I presented, but the Ombudsman's report does raise wider matters of interest for the local government family, which is why I propose the Council wrote to the Secretary of State and Local Government Association for that clarity, some of which may reflect on any proposals there are to amend or update the standards process nationally. So I repeat, for the avoidance of any doubt, I do not diminish by seeking to ask government to consider further the standards process, the apology I presented to Councillor Dawes. With regard to my recommendations to Council, because the apology has come from me in my role as leader of the Council, colleagues will recall that I specifically included a recommendation where a further apology is provided by the Managing Director to Councillor Dawes in order to be sure that it is complete, that both the elected part of the Council and the officer part of the Council acknowledge the Ombudsman's report. In the Ombudsman's report, he sets out recommendations. And at 74, he says, apologise to Councillor Dawes, accepting the findings of this investigation, which is what we have done and are doing. And that we rescind the decision notice of the 22nd of July, which is included in the recommendations. And then in paragraph 75, a series of further considerations is set out by the Ombudsman, which we also endorse, embrace, and want to accept and do. The Ombudsman does not make reference to any other councillor, any other decision of the Council, any other standards matter. And without being interrupted, the issue of this extraordinary meeting was called solely to consider the Ombudsman's report and recommendations to Council, Chairman. And so I resist the amendments made because the purpose of this meeting is solely to consider the Ombudsman's report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Swain.
Thank you. Colleagues, we've heard quite a number of declarations of interest today. I think it's clear that this is a matter that affects the whole Council. It's relevant to all of our officers. And whilst it's important that individuals declare their declaration of interest, I am very pleased that everybody is still in the room. I think it's important that this is an open process. I seconded a motion that Councillor Patch be no further heard on this matter. Those were the words that I...
You cannot move that motion, only the Chair can.
The Chair... Thank you, Councillor Patch. If you remember, the Chair proposed the motion and I seconded it. As I was saying, I seconded a motion that Councillor Patch be no further heard on this matter. The wording was quite specific. It was the matter of his own legal proceedings against the Council, which are not the subject of the Ombudsman's report or the subject of this meeting.
The subject of the Ombudsman's report was systemic problems in the standards regime.
Councillor Patch, please sit down and please be silent, or I will have to ask you to leave the meeting.
Thank you. So I specifically seconded the motion that Councillor Patch not be heard on an issue which was not relevant to this meeting, which is the Ombudsman's report and the associated findings. The Ombudsman's report has found that the Council had systemic failings, as our colleagues have pointed out. I think we all accept that. You've heard the apologies. I agree. One of those failings was conflating the actions of one councillor with those of another. This is mentioned in paragraph 61. It's very important, as the Council has now learned, that we are very careful about exactly what we're talking about, exactly what did happen. Some of the actions that Councillor Dawes were accused of were actually committed by Councillor X, as I understand the report. This is important. We need to be mindful of it. And it is important that we are very clear about things being accurate. It's important, therefore, that we read what the Ombudsman's report actually says and not conflate that with what we would like it to say. The Ombudsman's report's findings, both in faults and in corrections, are all about the process that was carried out during the investigation. Nothing in the Ombudsman's findings is about the actions that led to the investigation or other actions around that, and that's very important. So when we hear words like exonerated, that is not the case. The wording of the Ombudsman's report is very clear. It is all about the process that was followed, which was wrong, and the Council has lessons to learn from that. Richard Dawes earlier came up with a number of allegations of wrongdoing. I think, if I remember correctly, misleading the High Court was used. My apologies. My apologies. Thank you, councillors. You are sitting behind me. I apologise if I have misattributed. This is, as we are all agreed, very important.
It doesn't matter who misled the High Court. What matters is it was misled.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Patch.
I do not believe that allegations of misleading the High Court are relevant to the Ombudsman's proceedings. These are serious allegations and should be looked at, but not in the context of shouting at people in council meetings which are about a different subject. It's not the right place to investigate serious allegations of wrongdoing.
Comes under the remit of this meeting.
Richard Dawes, I think it was, but again, they are sitting behind me, I apologise if I am quoting the wrong person, said that the council needs to protect its officers, as though this is not the case. In fact, this is the case. Again, if we read the Ombudsman's report very carefully, it talks quite a lot about the Human Rights Act and the enhanced right to free speech, which I'll be coming to in a moment. It talks about that, but it specifically says two things. It says that it has not found anything about whether or not Councillor Dawes' human rights were breached. It does not comment on that very specifically, states that it does not comment on it, and it also states that the enhanced right to free speech is a qualified right which must be weighed against other rights, including the Council's right to protect its officers from bullying and harassment and intimidation, and inappropriate pictures on Facebook.
Repeating the smears that we've just spent 3 minutes fighting.
And it has a duty, and the Chair has a duty.
Sorry, excuse me, Councillor.
Please.
Is there a point of order, Councillor McGregor?
Point of order. Whilst I appreciate Councillor Swain's detailed speech, and it is covering a lot of area, it is actually straying now into the problems that led to the Ombudsman's report. And I think it's really important that we don't repeat smears that have been made.
I don't think smears are being repeated, and I'm sure Councillor Swain will be very careful to ensure that's the case.
I will be careful.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor.
Thank you.
Councillor Swain.
I was speaking about the Council's duty to protect its officers from bullying and harassment and intimidation. I also refer to the Chair's duty to keep the meeting in order. This is particularly relevant because recently an allegation was made, which Councillor Malone, I think it was, but again, my apologies, are sitting behind me, pointed out where it was claimed that human rights were being breached because the chair had interrupted a councillor during a meeting. I think this is very important. I think human rights are very important. I spend a lot of my time fighting for them. And so I took the step of seeking legal advice about whether the human rights were being breached, and the response was that they are not. But I am summarising, that was not the words used. The response, which is open councillors' questions, anyone can look it up, the response was very detailed and comprehensive and explained the balance between the right to free speech and other responsibilities in very similar wording, in fact, to the ones used by the Ombudsman. It is a balance. So let's be clear that this council has not, there is no evidence that this council has breached anybody's human rights. What the Ombudsman criticised was that what this report concluded is that the council failed to pause to consider the balance between human rights and the process, and that's...
Read the report!
Move the question is put, Chairman.
Seconded.
Move the questions are put.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We move that the questions are put, Chairman. Clearly, free speech in this council is working one way, and Councillor Malone wishes to interrupt. Let's put the questions, both the amendments and the recommendations.
No, we haven't motion yet.
Thank you, Chairman. I was saying, clearly, Councillor Malone can't let others speak. Let's just move to the questions are put, both the amendments and the recommendations.
You're silencing us all again. In a meeting called to address the fact you've broken the law by stamping on us speaking.
Chair, you're being shouted down.
Councillor Malone.
That's your only response. In my experience, it is the only response.
Chair, we are being shouted down.
We are being shouted down.
By people who are...
Because you won't let us speak.
Incredible.
And here we have a member who...
Councillor Patch, please sit down. Members, I am going to adjourn this meeting for 10 minutes, please, to take stock of where we are and what should come next. And Councillor Dawes, would you please turn off your camera whilst we are in adjournment? Can we please reconvene? The meeting is now reconvened. Councillor Dawes, sorry, Councillor Cox, you had something to say.
Sorry, could you explain the amendment? Because I am in favour of including Councillor X in the apology, but I'm don't think it should be extended to all councillors. They can individually write to the standard board. I have quite a lot of sympathy with Councillor Alison Eden's situation. Reading her letters, I feel she was treated differently as a woman. But that's irrelevant because this is about the Ombudsman's report. But Councillor Malone, if he is Councillor X, is entangled in that, and therefore I think the apology should be extended to him. So could the amendment be read out? I don't want to support a blanket pardon, for want of a better term.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I was going to ask Councillor Dawes to clarify his amendment. As I understand it, Councillor Dawes, your amendment was that the apology should be extended to include Councillor Malone. Is that correct?
My amendment was to include Councillor Malone for exactly the reasons that that Councillor Cox just pointed out, that he was conflated.
Thank you, Councillor Dawes.
And I did want to come back to the points raised by Councillor Swain.
Can I just finish clarifying your amendment, Councillor Dawes, because it was seconded by Councillor McGregor, who added a further amendment. Councillor McGregor, would you clarify that for us, please?
I'm going to withdraw that further amendment and just stick with Councillor Dawes.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so my just in clarity, I wanted the apology extended to Councillor Malone, and also in the report that I submitted to this meeting, I outlined serious failings from 2018 and wanted all of those findings to be deemed unsafe. No, you asked for clarification. That's what I actually said, if you'd like to rewind the tape.
So my view is that we should now go to the vote on Councillor...
I would like to come back to the points that were raised by Councillor Swain that were...
those are not relevant to the amendment, Councillor Dawes.
No, but they are relevant because he raised points that have been raised in a public forum that further defame me, as the council has done for the last 3 years, and I'd just like to clarify.
Ask for clarification.
Well, I'm going to read out what the Ombudsman said when
I think, Councillor Dawes, we should be going to the vote.
I think you need
amendment.
to look. I don't think that's reasonable. I'll just go back and restate that local councillors have a key role in scrutinising their authorities and have an enhanced right for freedom of speech to ask at what times appear uncomfortable questions. Now, Councillor Swain raised some very... I don't understand why Councillor Swain is able to put forward things that defame my standing in the community and then silences me.
I don't think there was
and then sits there cutting his throat.
Councillor Dawes, I do not
suggesting
believe
that I can't
Swain has defamed anybody.
Well, that's a matter for the courts. And
What this whole problem is about, isn't
Point
it?
of order. It has been proposed and seconded that the questions be now put. Can we clarify the questions and then put them, and nothing more?
Point of order, Councillor Swain has repeatedly overridden and interrupted Councillor Dawes' speech. I have had a vote against me not to be heard. Will you, Chair, consider having a vote that he not be heard any further on this matter?
I ask the chair of this council, having been subject to 3 years of injustice, that I am allowed to reply to Councillor Swain when he misquoted the Ombudsman's report.
Councillor Swain,
Yes, Chair.
I think...
I would like the questions to be now put.
I don't know why you're asking Councillor Swain.
Is Councillor Swain...
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair. If I just may interject here. Your question was to Councillor Dawes regarding his amendment.
Yes.
Right? You're asking Councillor Dawes for clarity on that amendment.
And he has clarified that his amendment was to extend the apology to include Councillor Malone.
Okay.
I think we should take a vote on that amendment. We should take a vote on that amendment.
There was a further part to the amendment that all standards hearings since 2018 be deemed to be unsafe due to the systemic failings outlined by the local government ombudsman.
Councillor Dawes, I don't think that part was included in your original amendment.
Yes, it was.
In your,
Chair.
it was? Oh,
Yes.
I beg your pardon.
Accept that it was. Go to Councillor McGregor. If he's prepared to second that, fine. And then move on to the vote.
Seconded, Chair.
It's seconded. Right, we go to the vote.
Point of order, Chair.
Pardon? A recorded vote.
Point of order, Chair. I don't think this meeting is doing what it says on the tin. It's just not doing what it set out to do. You're supposed to be reviewing a report that found systemic failings.
No.
And what you're trying to do is ring-fence those failings. And you're throwing rocks at who's already been thrown overboard, which is very brave of you. And I do agree she was awful. But, you know, the still sitting right there. Councillor Swain has tried to say, oh, well, this isn't, they didn't really find anything, and I've seen all of you Lib Dems at the front nodding and going, yeah, it wasn't really anything. Yeah, let's ring fence it, let's pretend it's just some administrative problem. I wish all the Lib Dems would go away and read Locke and John Stuart Mill and try and remember what your party is meant to be about, because you've got no fucking clue.
Councillor Malone, please.
Listen,
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, go on then, walk out. Go on, courageous Gary, leave the room. Farewell. Do you want me to come out and have a fight with you, Gary?
Councillor Swain, Councillor Taylor, please return. We will go to
this
the recorded
council
vote.
needs root and branch change. He should not be sitting there. You should not be sitting there.
I'm sorry, we cannot...
You were on the Standards Committee. You have been corrupt since the day you started. You should not be here. This thing is rotten.
We can't carry on like this, I'm sorry.
Don't carry on. Resign, all of you.
I move...
And you lot, all of you, it was nice to see you sit there and vote for him
asked the members of the public to stop disrupting the meeting.
Well done. Good luck in May.
I move that we go to a show of hands vote on the amendment that Councillor Dawes.
Well, I asked for the chairman. I'm happy for recorded vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 people is recorded vote. Okay, thank you. We go to recorded vote, please, Trish.
Councillor Austin? Councillor Bradford? Councillor Bullivant? Councillor Colclough? Councillor Connett? Councillor Cox? Councillor Dawes? Councillor Dewhurst? Against. Councillor Foden? Against. Councillor Goodman-Bradbury? Against. Councillor Gribble? Against. Councillor Haynes? Against. Councillor Hayes? Against. Councillor Gordon Hook? Against. Councillor Jackie Hook? Against. Councillor Jeffrey? Against. Councillor Jenks? Abstain. Councillor Keeling? Against. Councillor McGregor? Councillor Malone?
I suggest I have a conflict of interest, so I'm not seeing anything.
Is that for you, Chair? Councillor Malone, is that an abstention or no vote? No. Councillor Nutley? Against. Councillor Parker? Against. Councillor Patch?
I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to take part in this vote, to be honest. And in any case, I'm not really sure. I want my name alongside some of the people that are voting on this motion. I've listened to no respect for the vast majority of them.
For you, Chair?
No vote.
No vote.
No vote.
Councillor Peart? Councillor Petherick? Councillor Purser? Councillor Rollison? Councillor Russell? Councillor Swain? Councillor Taylor? Councillor Wrigley?
Against.
Councillor yourself, Chair?
Against.
And Councillor Cass.
I move then that we go to the recommendations as put forward, proposed by Councillor Connett, who also proposed a recorded vote for that in favour or against his recommendations. So we are voting on the, I think it was 10 recommendations advanced by Councillor Connett, either for or against. Recorded vote, please, Trish.
Good Chair. Councillor Austin? Councillor Bradford? Councillor Bullivant? Councillor Colclough. Councillor Connett. Councillor Cox. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor Foden. Councillor Goodman-Bradbury. Councillor Gribble. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Gordon-Hook. Councillor Jackie Hook. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Jenks. Councillor Keeling. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Malone.
I'm not playing.
That's no vote, Chair. Councillor Nutley. Councillor Parker. Councillor Patch.
Again, I'm not sure whether I should be taking part in this vote, and I would rather not have my name alongside those who I hold and have to disdain.
Please
the vast
record,
majority
please
of
record
members.
no vote.
No vote, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Piat. Councillor Petherick. Councillor Purser. Councillor Rollison. Councillor Russell. Councillor Swain. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wigley. Yourself, Chair.
4.
And Vice Chair.
That, I think, concludes the business of the meeting on the agenda, so I declare the meeting closed.